Used vehicle prone shoppers, 19.5%. Those in this group are the most price sensitive and most aggressive bargain hunters of all those that we have profiled. That's me. Spend less on average than do the members of any other groups. They paid an average of $22,500 for their most recent acquisition, under $30,000 for their most expensive. Their latest purchase represents less than 0.07% of their wealth. Their most expensive acquisition, less than 0.9%. This group contains the smallest proportion who have clients, friends, or relatives in the automotive industry. Given that they don't have a friend in the automobile business, how do they go about finding a good deal? First and foremost, they don't buy new vehicles. Also, you will note that the title of this group, used vehicle prone shoppers, does contain the word dealer. These does not contain the word dealer. These people buy their used vehicles from all types of seller. Most often they buy from private parties, but they often shop at dealerships, leasing companies, financial institutions, consignment companies, auction companies, and agents. Used vehicle prone shoppers are extremely patient people. They are the most likely of all millionaire car buyers to take months to find the best overall deal. They never seem to be in a hurry to buy. In some ways, they are always looking for a deal. They are in a semi-searching buying state all of the time. In one instance, a member of this group casually looked around for a deal on a late model Chevrolet for more than 7 months. But unlike Dr. South from Chapter 3, this bargain shopper never spent a great deal of time making this acquisition. It seems that on his long commute to work, he routinely passed by 3 dealers. If he noticed a vehicle that caught his eye, he would contact the dealer by phone. At the same time, he would telephone sellers who had their vehicles listed in the classifieds. He eventually made a purchase from a private party at a price substantially lower than at any dealer he had contacted. He told the seller, "I am not in a hurry. Give me a call in a month or so and I'll make you an offer. But right now, you're asking nearly as much as all the dealers I have been in contact with in the past few weeks." He tells the same thing to all the people he contacts. He also has a favorite time of the year to negotiate. He claims he is the most successful in cutting deals from the last 2 weeks of December into February. During the winter season, he says, sellers don't find a lot of shoppers out and about. Christmas-related expenses and activities and the cold weather distract and discourage most potential buyers from shopping during this period. They do not discourage many used vehicle-prone shoppers. It is not at all unusual for buyers in this group to have 4 or more sellers competing simultaneously for their business during these months. The members of this group typically acquire low mileage vehicles that are 2 to 4 years old. Their favorite makes include Fords, Mercedes, Cadillacs, Lexuses, Chevrolets, Nissans, and Acuras. What buying habits reveal? One can learn a great deal about the affluent people by analyzing their vehicle buying habits. For instance, note that most millionaires are dealer shoppers as opposed to dealer loyalists, not by a large margin, 54 versus 45. You may logically counter, but this margin is a bit misleading. Net out percentage of dealer loyalists who are so inclined because they have strong reciprocal relationships with their favorite dealer. Factor out also those loyalists who patronize dealerships owned by relatives and close personal friends. Then ask about the percentages of loyalists versus shoppers. If you do, you will find that there are at least 2 shoppers for every loyalist among the ranks of American millionaires. What about vehicle purchasers in general? Most vehicle buyers are not wealthy. Thus, one might logically expect them to spend more time and energy shopping for the best deal. Our research shows the opposite. Those who are not wealthy are less likely to shop, haggle, and negotiate than those who are millionaires. Car buying behavior does indeed help explain why some people are wealthy while most are not and never will be. More aggressive bargain shoppers for motor vehicles also tend to bargain hunt for other consumer products. These people also tend to plan their expenditures. Given these findings, what What buyer type of the four profiled above would you expect to be the most frugal in general? Have you guessed that it is the used vehicle prone shoppers? Used vehicle prone shoppers are the most aggressive and most price sensitive when it comes to acquiring motor vehicles. They shop using a wide variety of sources, and on average, they pay significantly less for their vehicles than do members of the other groups. Of all the types studied, used vehicle prone shoppers are the most illuminating for those interested in studying the path to affluence. Why? Because of all the groups studied, its members have the highest ratio of net worth for each dollar of income. For every $1 used vehicle prone shoppers realize in income, they have 17.2 of net worth. They have the lowest average income of all the groups, yet on average, they have been able to accumulate more than $3 million. How do they do it? Their wealth development strategy is worth detailing. Millionaires who are used vehicle prone shoppers. What factors explain variations in wealth accumulation? Income is a factor. People with higher incomes are expected to have higher levels of wealth. But note again that members of this group of used vehicle buyers have a significantly lower income than the average for the other groups of millionaires. About 2/3 have incomes in the high 5 or low 6-figure range. Occupation is another factor. We have noted many times that entrepreneurs account for a disproportionately large share of millionaires in America. Conversely, most of the other high income producing occupations contain disproportionately smaller portions of high net worth types. These include physicians, corporate middle managers, executives, dentists, accountants, attorneys, engineers, architects, high income producing civil servants, and professors. But there are exceptions. For example, each of these non-entrepreneurial occupations is represented in the used vehicle prone shopper group we are profiling. Used vehicle prone shoppers are unique even among their millionaire cohorts. Note that on average, they have the highest scores available on all 7 measures of frugality. Wow. Behind their frugal behavior is a strong set of beliefs. First, they believe in the benefits of being financially independent. Second, they believe that being frugal is the key to achieving independence. They inoculate themselves from heavy spending by constantly reminding themselves that many people who have high status artifacts, such as expensive clothing, jewelry, cars, and pools, have little wealth. They often tell the same thing to their children. In one case we studied, a youngster had once asked his dad why their family didn't have a swimming pool. His dad answered with the big hat, no cattle response that many frugal people articulate. He told his son that they could have a pool installed, but that a new pool would mean the family would not be able to send the son to Cornell. Today, the son, Carl, is a Cornell graduate. No, his folks never had a swimming pool installed. What will happen when Carl's children ask about their father's proclivity to frugality? Will he be able to defend his purchasing orientation and his frugal nature in general? The answer to this question is reflected in the results given in Table 4.4. Used vehicle-prone shoppers are significantly more likely to report the following. My parents were very frugal. Once a member of the used vehicle-prone shopper group told us about his frugal habits. He explained that his parents were farmers. My family in Nebraska understood the value of $1. Dad used to say, seeds are a lot like dollars. You can eat the seeds or sow them, but when you would see what seeds turned into 10-foot high corn, you don't want to waste them. Consume them or plant them. I always get a kick out of watching things grow. This man derived considerable enjoyment in his nondescript 4-door, 3-year-old American-made sedan. He believed that his vehicle never revealed to the public that he was very affluent, nor, according to him, would it ever encourage thieves to follow him home to burglarize his property. He often referred to his car as the last one that would ever be stolen out of the airport parking lot. Frugality translates into wealth. Being frugal is a major reason members of the used vehicle prone group are wealthy. Being frugal provides them with a dollar base to invest. In fact, they invest a significantly larger portion of their annual income than do any of the other types of vehicle buyers. This also applies to their contributions to pension annuity programs. As you may have already predicted, the used vehicle prone shopper group also contains the highest percentage of prodigious accumulators of wealth. This group is significantly more likely to agree with the statement, "Our household operates on a fairly well thought out annual budget." To budget properly, one must keep records of disbursements. Here again, the used vehicle prone shopper is more fastidious than any of the other types. More of them agree that "I know how much our family spends each year for food, clothing, and shelter." Used vehicle prone shoppers are also bargain oriented when it comes to buying clothing. Their score of 145 was the highest overall. A significantly higher percentage agree with this statement. "I never bought a suit that was not on sale." Used vehicle prone shoppers are significantly more likely to be discount store patrons than other types of vehicle buyers. This is evident from their positive response to the following statement: "I often buy my suits at factory outlets." In addition, they are significantly more frequent shoppers at Sears than any of the other types of millionaire vehicle buyers. This group on average spends considerably less for a variety of items. As discussed in Chapter 2, we asked all of our millionaire respondents to tell us the most they ever paid for: 1, a wristwatch; 2, a suit of clothing; 3, a pair of shoes. Once again, the used vehicle prone shopper demonstrated his frugality. Members of this group spent only 59% as much as the other millionaires in our survey for a wristwatch, 83% for a suit, and 88% for a pair of shoes. The majority of people do not have the ability to increase their income significantly, yet income is a positive correlation of wealth. What then is our message? If you cannot increase your compensation significantly, become wealthy some other way. Do it defensively. This is how most of the used vehicle prone shoppers did it. They successfully inoculated themselves from contracting the high consumption lifestyle that many of their neighbors adopted. More than 70% of their neighbors earn as much or more than they earn, but fewer than 50% of their neighbors have a net worth of 1 million or more. Most of these millionaires' high income, low net worth neighbors make the wrong assumption. They assume that by focusing their energy on generating high incomes, they will automatically become affluent. They play excellent offense in this regard. Most are positioned in the top 3 or 4% or higher of the income distribution for all U.S. households. Most look the part of the millionaires, yet they are not wealthy. They play lousy defense. They have stated many times the belief of countless millionaires who have told us it's much easier in America to earn a lot than it is to accumulate wealth. Why is this the case? Because we are a consumption-oriented society, and the high-income producing non-millionaire neighbors of used vehicle-prone shoppers are among the most consumption-oriented people in America. Case studies: Mr. J.S., CPA, new vehicle-prone dealer loyalist. Mr. J.S. is one of 3 senior partners in a small but highly productive CPA firm. He is also a millionaire. Mr. J.S. enjoys buying new vehicles and is completely turned off by the idea of buying used cars. To him, owning a used vehicle is like wearing someone else's old clothes. Mr. J.S. is a dealer loyalist in part because his time is more valuable than shopping for a so-called big discount. In addition, Mr. J.S. buys from a dealer with whom he does business. Again, networking and reciprocity are major factors underlying the motor vehicle purchasing habits of many new vehicle-prone dealer loyalists. How does Mr. J.S. acquire the motor vehicle dealer as his accounting client? By referring more than a dozen of his clients to the owner of the dealership before ever selling the dealership any of his accounting services. Previously, the owner had dealt with another accounting firm for years before realizing that his accounting firm had never referred one of its clients to him. Now the dealer and Mr. JS have a strong reciprocal bond. One of the great advantages of being self-employed and business owner is the ability to leverage your organizational patronage habits. In the case of Mr. JS, he also leveraged his influence over several of his clients. He is the dealer opinion leader for many of his clients. Mr. JS makes it clear to each client he refers that the dealer is also a client. The dealer, in turn, is likely to give favorable service and price concessions to these clients. Over the past 10 years, Mr. JS has essentially sold more than 3 dozen motor vehicles for his client, the car dealer. At the same time, the dealer has expended many thousands of dollars of accounting services from Mr. JS. Mr. TF, stockbroker, used vehicle-prone dealer loyalist. Mr. TF is a stockbroker and a millionaire who enjoys purchasing late-model used luxury automobiles. After purchasing several models from the same dealer, Mr. TF had an idea. He would make a personal sales call to the owner of the dealership. Mr. TF first reminded the owner that he had purchased 3 cars from him in the past 5 years and had referred several of his clients to the dealer. Mr. TF then asked the dealer if he would reciprocate by giving him some of his investment business. The dealer's response was very frank. He told Mr. TF that he sold vehicles to dozens of stockbrokers and that he could not do business with all of them. Mr. TF understood the dealer's positions, so he made a counterproposal. He asked if the dealer would be so kind to give him the names of his top 5 suppliers. Assume that you were asked to nominate the suppliers of the year in this state. Who would be in the top of your list? Who put the new roof on this place? Can I mention that you suggested I call him? The dealer did refer several of his key suppliers to Mr. TF. Mr. TF still buys his vehicles from this dealer and makes referrals on his behalf. In turn, the dealer refers business to Mr. TF. Author Tom Stanley sells a car. Just before Christmas, I placed a classified ad in the local newspaper to sell my family's Acura Legend. Prior to doing so, I called our dealer. He advised me about the upper limit price I could anticipate receiving for the car, and that was the price that we advertised. I have always meticulously maintained our motor vehicles. Our Legend had nearly every conceivable option, including the so-called gold package. The car was always garaged. Our Acura dealer did all the prescribed maintenance and tune-up procedures. We even used Mobil 1 synthetic oil. The car had a good set of Michelin MX V4 tires with a few thousand miles on them, and perhaps most important, we had purchased the car new. My classified ad outlined many of these characteristics. Allow me to profile some of the characters who took the time to stop by and look over our car. Shopper 1, a senior marketing officer, female. She arrived driving an Infiniti Q45. When I saw the car, I asked her why she was interested in a Legend since her Q45 appeared to be nearly new. She told me that the Q45 was her husband's and that they had purchased it used nearly a year ago. In fact, she had just finished looking over previously owned Legends and Infinitis at several dealers. She made it very clear that her household had a used vehicle orientation. It was not particularly loyal to any make of automobile, but she and her husband did prefer a narrow set of vehicles. These included Acura Legends, Infiniti Q45s, and the Lexus 400 series. The day she visited me, she had taken the afternoon off from work. She had a map of the Atlanta area and marked the locations of selected dealers and the addresses of private sellers. In this way, she made it very clear that she was well aware of many compelling opportunities. It was obvious to me that this woman was very skilled in evaluating used cars. She immediately pointed to a small ding on the driver's door. She examined the interior, the engine compartment, and the car's sheet metal. Then she asked me why I had to sell the Legend. I responded by saying that my teenage children have an aversion to four-door sedans. To them, A legend is well suited for middle-aged, unexciting people like their parents. They would much prefer even a well-used 4x4 sport utility vehicle to a sporty two-door number. She paused and reflected on my comments. Now that I think about it, I suspect she would have preferred another answer. She would have wanted me to say that I was selling the vehicle because of financial obligations. This would have put her in a much stronger bargaining position. Nonetheless, she attempted to negotiate a lower price. She asked, "What's the lowest you are willing to take for the car?" I responded by telling her, "If I don't sell it in 30 days, I will consider lowering the price." I then pointed to the portfolio on the front seat, which contained all the maintenance records, original window sticker, and so on. She turned around, got back in her husband's previously owned Q45, and left. I never heard from her again. I am convinced she found exactly what she was looking for, that is, a real deal on a late model used vehicle from someone who was in a hurry to sell. Shopper 2, a vice president at a regional financial institution, male. You may find it particularly interesting to learn this fellow's specific job title. He was vice president of the motor vehicle leasing department. I guess you could say he had an excellent understanding of the true value of motor vehicles. He also understood the relative advantage of buying versus leasing. It seems that this expert on leasing new vehicles spends his time searching for deals on used ones. Shopper 2 was also looking for a real deal. He was interested in several makes of quality Japanese cars, but, like Shopper 1, had no loyalty to any specific make. He spent a considerable amount of time going over the maintenance and other records for the Acura. Then he asked the same question Shopper 1 did. "Without you hitting me on the head, what is the least you would take for the Acura?" I gave him the same number I'd given Shopper 1. He also left. I'm still waiting for his call. Shopper 3, a wealthy former business owner, male. Shopper 3 was the most interesting of the people whom I came into contact. When he called me, he mentioned that he was intending to drive his wife to a local shopping center. He asked about our location, which he found ideal relative to the shopping center. He and his wife arrived shortly after our phone conversation in a 5 Series BMW. The car looked like it had just come out of the showroom, so I asked him about his need to purchase the Acura. He informed me that the BMW was his wife's car. He then scrutinized the Acura from top to bottom. While he was doing so, I had an interesting conversation with his wife. She informed me that her husband had recently sold his share in a successful software operation. They were millionaires. Her husband still acted as a consultant to the organization, but now he had more time to do other things. She also told me that her husband had never purchased a new car in the 30 years that they had been married. Apparently, he is a semi-constant search for real deals on automobiles. He is particularly prone to purchasing quality used Japanese and German vehicles, but he is absolutely never in a hurry to make such purchases. Like many people in the used vehicle-prone shopper group, he gets immense pleasure from finding good deals from private sellers with too much car, too little capital. I suspect that is why he spent time debriefing me. He asked me what I did for a living. He asked me how well my business was operating. Perhaps he had thought I was an out-of-work corporate executive. Why else would I be at home in the middle of the afternoon in my khaki pants and flannel shirt? I told him I was an author, working on a book, number 4. Then he inquired about how well my other books were selling. "Great," I answered. He then frowned and asked the question of questions. "Would you be interested in knocking $1,500 off the asking price?" Again, I responded, "Perhaps in 30 days if I don't sell it before then." I am still waiting to hear from him too. He did seem impressed with the way I maintained automobiles, so just before he left, he asked if I intended to sell any of my other cars. He pointed to my high-performance Z28 Camaro. I had to turn him down on that offer too. Shopper 4, a school teacher, female. Isn't it interesting that a disproportionately high number of used car shoppers come from the ranks of teachers and professors? Shopper 4 called me late one Friday evening. When do weekend telephone rates go into effect? She then had a battery of questions to ask me. After this intense debriefing, she informed me that she lived several hundred miles from Atlanta in cotton country. She said she was in the process of calling many of the people who listed Acura Legends in the Atlanta Classified. She promised to get back in touch with me the following Wednesday. She kept her promise and asked if I could fax her evidence that there was no outstanding liens on the vehicle. She also asked if if it would be possible to have a more detailed list of the car's accessories. I faxed her the title and a copy of the original window sticker and prices and options. She then advised me that she planned to come to Atlanta that Friday and look at several vehicles that were for sale. She and her husband, a successful cotton farmer, arrived at the house on Friday. They were driving a late model Nissan Maxima. The automobile appeared to be in excellent condition. Shopper Ford drove her husband and me around the community for about 20 minutes, test driving the Acura. During that time, I had a chance to debrief them. Why did they drive all the way from cotton country? Why were they interested in buying a used vehicle? Aren't farmers supposed to be frugal? It seems that this couple shops for late model quality used Japanese vehicle every 2 or 3 years. They find the prices and availability significantly better in the big city. They are nearly 150 miles from the nearest Acura dealer. They buy cars like mine and resell them in 2 or 3 years in the rural communities for close to what they paid for them. Wow. Shopper 4 and her husband convinced me that they were frugal. They arrived with a certified check in the amount of $1,000 less than my asking price. The farmer, upon returning from the test drive, asked his wife, "Aren't you going to try to negotiate with the guy?" She in turn said, "This fellow doesn't need to sell this car, and it's in great condition." Her husband agreed. Thereupon, she handed me the certified check and 10 $100 bills. After all the papers were signed and the deal was complete, she told me that my car was sold for at least $3,000 more at a dealer nearest her farm. I responded that her colleagues would likely be impressed with this car when she drove up to school on Monday. Her husband commented that the other teachers would really be impressed if they knew how little she had paid for it. One comment he made was of particular interest to me. My wife works with a woman who drives a new, comparably equipped Mercedes-Benz. She leased it for 60 months, $600 per month. Do you know how much cotton you'd have to grow to make those payments? A professor of thrift has UAWs for neighbors. How did Dr. Bill, an engineering professor who never had a total household income of more than $80,000, become a millionaire? He inherited nothing. He never won the lottery or hired an investment advisor who turned a few thousand of his dollars into a fortune. His success in accumulating wealth is based on living well below his means. This professor is a classic example of a used vehicle prone shopper. But like most of those in this buyer group, he never neglected his family. He provided funds for his children's college tuitions in full and more. He and his family live in a fine home in an upper middle class neighborhood. In fact, about 80% of his group live in homes valued at $300,000 to $500,000. Dr. Bill's goal always was to become financially independent, but he never wanted to become an entrepreneur. Often entrepreneurs become wealthy by taking substantial risks and by leveraging the labor and talent of dozens, even hundreds of others. Dr. Bill was never cut out to be anything but a professor. He is not alone. Most people in this country are not the entrepreneurial type, but this does not mean they can't become millionaires. People often confuse our message about the relationship between being wealthy and being an entrepreneur. We're not telling people to give up doing their own thing in medicine, law, accounting, and other occupations and join the ranks of the entrepreneurs in this country. Don't even consider such a change unless you really want to and are fully capable of succeeding. If you can generate a reasonably good income, say twice the norm for households in America, or $65,000 to $70,000, then you may become wealthy one day if you follow the defensive strategy developed by millionaires who are used vehicle-prone shoppers. Most of Dr. Bill's non-millionaire neighbors have no household budget. They do no consumption planning. As a result, they have no restriction on their domestic expenditures except one, the upper limits of their income. Yet these are the very types who are prone to whisper criticisms about frugal neighbors such as Dr. Bill. Mr. Norman is an executive who lives in a $400,000 home in Dr. Bill's neighborhood. His household income last year was in excess of $150,000, but he has next to zero invested in anything other than his home equity, motor vehicles, and a corporate pension plan. Mr. Norman's household has a net worth of under $200,000. Mr. Norman and his wife are each 50 years old. So are their neighbors, the used vehicle-prone shopper Dr. Bill and his wife. Bill earns only about half what the Normans earn, but Bill's household has a net worth that is 9 times greater than the Normans. How can this be possible? It's more than possible. It's possible and predictable. Great offense and poor defense translates into accumulation of wealth. But the Normans are not alone. There are many more under accumulators in their neighborhood than there are prodigious accumulators like Dr. Bill and his family. UAWs are like the Normans, find it degrading to even think about shopping for a used car. To them, a used car is out of the question. Their neighbor, Dr. Bill, never felt degraded shopping for quality used cars. In fact, acquiring used cream puffs gives him great satisfaction. Over the years, he figures that he has saved enough buying used over new to completely fund one of his children's college and graduate school tuitions. Where did Dr. Bill buy his latest motor vehicle? A 3-year-old BMW 5 Series? From Gary, a high-income, high-consuming sales professional employed in the high-tech field. Gary buys only new motor vehicles. If Gary is like most UAWs, he firmly believes that the buyer of his old 5 Series BMW is not as financially well off as he is. This is one of the telltale symptoms of being a UAW. UAWs usually think they have more wealth than their neighbors. Many UAWs also believe that people driving the best they can afford. Think of this situation in another way. Gary, the under-accumulator of wealth, is subsidizing Dr. Bill's motor vehicle purchases. Gary takes the brunt of the 3-year depreciation and then transfers title of a fine automobile to Dr. Bill, the frugal millionaire. Also, since Gary is an employee, he cannot write off depreciation against his income tax liability. In addition, Gary has no friends, relatives, or clients in the motor vehicle business. He gets no tax write-offs, no super discounts from an uncle or aunt who owns a dealership, and no reciprocity from a client customer who is in the automobile business. He consumes motor vehicles purely for pleasure. What should Gary, Mr. Norman, and other UAW variety know? That they spend more for motor vehicles than the typical American millionaire. Gary's earned income is equal to that of many millionaires, yet Gary isn't a millionaire. Perhaps he compensates for this through his heavy consumption of status products. Is he trying to emulate the driving and buying habits of the chairman of the company that employs him? But the chairman is a millionaire and owns equity in the corporation. Unlike Gary, he never purchased an expensive automobile until after he was wealthy. Instead, he put much of his income back into the company via stock purchases. In contrast, Gary makes his expensive purchases in anticipation of becoming wealthy, but that day is unlikely to ever arrive.